My hands were trembling as I held the silver-wrapped gift box. Behind me, my husband Richard, after 45 years of marriage, stood frozen in his freshly pressed suit. The words hit me like ice water poured down my back. Mom, Dad, you're not invited. This is my day. Please leave. She had no idea we could cancel everything with a few phone calls. By sunset, her perfect wedding would crumble around her, and she'd learn what happens when you throw away the parents who sacrificed everything for you. I remember checking my appearance one last time in the hallway mirror before we left for the wedding. My hair was freshly styled, an $85 splurge I rarely allowed myself. The pale blue dress had been carefully selected to complement the wedding colors without drawing attention. Do I look okay? I asked, smoothing imaginary wrinkles from my skirt. Beautiful as always, Margaret, Richard said, with that smile that still warmed me after all these years. On the hallway table sat the silver-wrapped box containing my mother's necklace. 3 generations of Wilson women had worn it on their wedding days. I had cleaned and polished the antique silver and pearl pendant until it gleamed. I imagined Olivia's face when she opened it, perhaps a rare moment of emotion from our increasingly distant daughter. The journey to disaster, the drive to Lakeside Gardens, was filled with light conversation and memories. Remember when Olivia used to make us those construction paper cards? Richard chuckled. The ones where she'd trace her hand to make a turkey at Thanksgiving and insist we display them on the fridge until they fell apart, I added, smiling at the memory of our little girl with pigtails and boundless enthusiasm. Where had that little girl gone? When had she transformed into the woman who now barely returned our calls? We arrived at the venue, the elegant garden estate that Richard and I had paid for from his retirement fund. $32,000 for the venue alone, the flowers, the catering, the photographer, the band, all bearing our signatures on the contracts. The rejection when we reached the bridal suite. There stood our daughter in her wedding gown, not the one she had initially chosen with me. This one was more elaborate, with delicate beadwork across the bodice that must have cost a fortune. For a moment, I felt a surge of maternal pride. My beautiful daughter on her wedding day. Then I saw her expression. There was no warmth, no joy at seeing us. Instead, her lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes cool and calculating. Mom, Dad, she said, her voice flat and cold as ice. What are you doing back here? The wedding coordinator brought us. We wanted to see you before the ceremony, give you our gift. I extended the silver box, smiling despite the growing unease in my stomach. It's your grandmother's necklace, the one you always admired. I thought maybe you'd want to wear it today. Olivia didn't tick the box. Instead, she stepped into the hallway, pulling the door mostly closed behind her. Look, she said, lowering her voice, there's been a change of plans. What do you mean? I asked. She sighed as if explaining something to a child. Mom, Dad, you're not invited to the ceremony or reception. This is my day, and Tyler and I have decided we want it to be just our friends and his family. Please leave. The bomb explodes. Words didn't make sense at first. Not invited to our own daughter's wedding, the wedding we had paid for. I don't understand, Richard said, his voice suddenly hoarse. We're your parents. We've arranged everything, and I appreciate that, Olivia said without a hint of actual appreciation. But this is what Tyler and I want. His parents have certain expectations about the kind of wedding this should be, and honestly, it's just better this way. Better without us. Tyler appeared, tall, handsome, placing a proprietary hand on her shoulder. Is everything okay here? He asked, his eyes coolly assessing us. Fine, Olivia said. I was just explaining to my parents that the guest list has changed, and then she said the words that would change everything. You should go. The planner can show you out a side entrance so you won't disturb the arriving guests. I stood there, the gift box heavy in my hands, as the reality of the situation sank in. My throat went dry. Around us, guests had begun to arrive, some glancing curiously in our direction. She threw us away, I whispered as we left. Richard gripped the steering wheel tightly. We raised a princess and got an ice queen. But here's the part Olivia didn't know. Our names were on all the contracts. The moment of decision stopped the car. I said suddenly, though we hadn't moved. We're anywhere with Wi-Fi. Richard nodded, started the engine, and pulled out of the parking lot. He drove a few miles down the road to a small cafe with a free Wi-Fi sign in the window. We walked inside, sat down, and opened our phones. The wedding was still happening. The guests were still arriving. The flowers were still being arranged. The music would soon play. The photos would be taken. But not for long. Our names were on the contracts. The final payments were pending for many services. We still had control. Richard looked at me, a question in his eyes. For 45 years, I had been the peacemaker in our family, the one who smoothed things over, who forgave quickly, who put others first. Always, not today. I nodded. Do it. The execution. Richard called the venue manager. I called the florist, then the decorator, then the caterer, then the music coordinator. Yes, I understand the event is already happening, I said calmly to the catering manager. But I'm the one who signed the contract and I'm canceling the service. Yes, I understand the timing, I told the band leader. Yes, I'm aware it will cause disruption. No yelling, no threats, just calm, cold clarity. She had thrown us away, so we were taking our gift with us. All of it. The chaos begins within an hour. Calls and texts started flooding our phones. The wedding planner first, Mrs. Wilson. There's been some confusion with the vendors. They're saying services have been cancelled. Then, Olivia, what is going on? Why is everything shutting down? I didn't answer. Let them ring. I sat in that cafe drinking cold coffee and making quiet calls, and felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not bitterness, just finality. She had chosen to cut us out. So we stepped all the way out. And she would feel the loss. Because without us, there would be no music, no dinner, no flowers, no celebration. She wanted us invisible. Fine. Then everything we gave her would disappear too. The truth behind the mask. Over the following days, we discovered the truth behind Olivia's behavior. A casual encounter at the grocery store with an acquaintance revealed that Tyler had lost his job at the bank 3 months earlier due to financial irregularities. His supposedly wealthy family was actually struggling to stay afloat. The expensive wedding wasn't a celebration, it was a desperate facade to maintain appearances. And we were the financiers of this lie. The signs we ignored sitting at home. I began to see the pattern I had ignored for years. The car we bought when she was 16. She didn't say thank you. Just muttered, I didn't ask for a used one. College, where we co-signed loans and paid rent. She called when she needed something, but rarely just to talk. The job where we helped her move, bought furniture, set up the apartment. One thanks without a hug or card. The signs were there. Years of small dismissals, quiet rejections, subtle erasures. But we kept showing up because that's what parents do, right? We give, we stay, we hope. The power shift that night. I didn't sleep much, but for the first time, it wasn't because I was worried about Olivia. It was because I finally understood the truth. And once you see the truth, you can't unsee it, and you don't go back. The next morning, I made coffee and sat by the window watching the sunrise. Richard joined me, pouring a cup and sitting across from me without a word. We didn't need words. We were both thinking the same thing. We were done begging to be included. We were done explaining why we mattered. And for the first time in decades, we were choosing ourselves. Perfect moment for call to action. If you're relating to this story, leave a comment sharing your experience. And subscribe to the channel, because we still have so much to discover about Margaret and Olivia. After a week of silence, the house felt different. Emptier maybe, but also strangely peaceful. Like the calm that follows a storm when you discover you're still standing. I found myself wandering through rooms with new eyes. In our bedroom, I noticed the reading chair that had been temporarily placed in the corner 15 years ago, positioned perfectly for late-night calls from Olivia during her college years, calls that gradually dwindled until they stopped altogether. I moved it to face the window instead, where morning light would make it ideal for the novels I'd been meaning to read. Rediscovering Richard, I was thinking. Richard said carefully, maybe we should redecorate this room. His suggestion wasn't about paint colors. It was about reclaiming space, physical and emotional. I'd like that, I said. That afternoon, we boxed up Olivia's remaining childhood items, labeling them neatly, not throwing them away. We weren't that angry, but no longer giving them pride of place in our home. It was a small act, but it felt significant, like the first step in a journey back to ourselves. The Garden of Healings. The next morning I woke earlier than usual. Richard was still asleep. I slipped out of bed, made coffee, and took my cup to the back porch. The garden needed attention. Weeds had sprouted between the hostas, and the rose bushes needed pruning. I hadn't spent much time there lately. Wedding planning had consumed every spare moment for months. I set my coffee down, pulled on gardening gloves, and knelt in the soft earth. There was something meditative about pulling weeds, identifying what didn't belong, removing it carefully, roots and all, to prevent it from returning. Making space for what you actually wanted to grow. The sisters visit. Susan, my younger sister, appeared at our door a few days later. I saw Olivia's posts about the wedding and got a call from her yesterday. She's pretty upset. Of course she wasn't here for me. She was here as Olivia's proxy. I'm sure she is, I said, keeping my voice neutral. She said you canceled her wedding, that you pulled all the vendors halfway through. And what exactly did Olivia tell you happened? Susan sat on the edge of the sofa. She said you got upset about some misunderstanding and retaliated by shutting everything down. That you couldn't handle not being the center of attention. She mentioned telling us we weren't invited. That we were asked to leave the venue before the ceremony even began. Susan's expression changed. What? I explained the entire situation. Susan was quiet for a moment, processing. That's not how she described it. I'm sure it wasn't. After Susan left, promising to call soon, Richard and I finished packing in silence. But it wasn't the heavy silence of a few days ago. It was thoughtful, unburdened. Someone had finally heard our side. Someone had finally seen. Discovering the truth. At Lake Morrison, our favorite retreat, we had time to process everything. It was there that I learned more about Tyler, through Howard Miller, an acquaintance. Shame about that business at the bank, he said casually. Never good to see a young man get caught up in something like that. I'm sorry. The irregularities in the accounts. I assumed you knew. It was all very hush-hush. But Kevin, he's on their compliance team, said Tyler was let go about 3 months ago. Something about improper handling of client funds. Tyler had lost his job 3 months ago. But Olivia had mentioned his work at the bank just weeks ago, talking about a promotion he was expecting. The pattern reveals itself when Richard and I researched further. We discovered that Tyler's wealthy family was actually in financial trouble. The $2 million house they supposedly owned had been refinanced 3 times in the past 5 years. The elaborate wedding, the sudden changes in plans, the expensive dress Olivia chose after rejecting the one we initially paid for, it all pointed to a desperate attempt to maintain appearances. They saw Olivia, and by extension, US, as a solution to their financial problems. The reconciliation attempt. Week later, we received a formal invitation, hand-delivered. Tyler and Olivia Reynolds request the pleasure of your company for a reconciliation dinner, Friday, June 12th, at 7 p.m., the Westlake Grill. A handwritten note was attached. Please come. We need to talk. Olivia, the Westlake Grill, one of the most expensive restaurants in the city, a place for business deals and anniversary celebrations. What do you think? Richard asked. I think it's another performance, I said. Another attempt to manage the situation without addressing the real issues. He nodded. So we don't go. Tyler called the next day, his voice carefully modulated. Professional. Margaret, I hope you and Richard are well. Olivia and I were disappointed you couldn't attend the wedding. There seems to have been some miscommunication, as if Olivia's direct statement "you're not invited" could possibly be misinterpreted. We won't be attending, I said when he mentioned the dinner. May I ask why? I think you know why. His tone became colder. Look, Margaret, I understand you're upset about the wedding. Things got emotional. Mistakes were made, but Olivia is devastated. She's your only daughter. Don't you think you owe her the chance to make things right? Owe her? I don't owe Olivia anything, I said, surprised by my own certainty, and I certainly don't owe you an explanation. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear or distress. From something that felt remarkably like power. Olivia's collapse in July. Olivia appeared on our doorstep. When I opened the door, I barely recognized her. The polished, confident woman who had dismissed us from her wedding was gone. In her place stood someone with smudged makeup, unwashed hair, and red-rimmed eyes. Mom, she said, her voice breaking on the single syllable. Tyler's gone, she said abruptly. He left yesterday. Took his clothes, his car, emptied our joint account. She looked up, her eyes wild. He's been lying to me, Mom, about everything. His job, his family's money, all of it. The irony was almost too much. Olivia had discovered that Tyler had used her exactly like they had used us. The confession and Then he told me he'd asked you for money," Olivia continued, sudden anger flashing in her eyes, "that you refused to help your own daughter. Ah, so that's why she was here. Not for comfort or reconciliation, but to confront me about not saving her from the consequences of her actions. Again." "Why not?" she asked when I confirmed I had refused to give Tyler $20,000. "That's not the point, Olivia." "Then what is?" "The pattern. The one where you make choices without considering consequences, then expect us to rescue you." The truth revealed over the next hour. Olivia's financial situation emerged in all its alarming detail. Tyler had lost his job after a scandal involving expense accounts. Rather than admit this failure, he had maintained their lifestyle through increasingly desperate means. The $20,000 he had requested wasn't for general expenses. It was to pay off a high-interest loan from a questionable source that was now making threatening calls. "Why didn't you tell us any of this was happening?" I asked. "I didn't know most of it myself. Tyler handled the finances. And after the wedding, I didn't think you'd want to hear from me because you told us to leave." She flinched. "Yes. The first real apology." "Why did you do that, Olivia?" "Really?" She was quiet for so long, I thought she might not answer. Then, in a small voice, "Tyler said your presence would embarrass his family, that they had certain expectations about the kind of wedding we should have, and you believed him." "I trusted him." She looked up, tears streaming now. "I wanted to belong to that world. The country club memberships, the charity galas, the summer homes. I thought that's what I wanted. And when he said your father and I wouldn't fit in, you chose his world over your family." She nodded miserably. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." It was the first genuine apology she had offered, and it landed like a weight on my heart. Heavy with the recognition of how much damage had been done, but also with the first real hope that healing might be possible. "The new rules, I know you are," I said softly, "but sorry is just the beginning. Real amends take time and consistent action." We called Richard, and by evening, a preliminary plan had taken shape. No, we would not give Olivia $20,000 outright, but we would help her negotiate with creditors, consult with a lawyer about Tyler's financial misconduct, and provide temporary support while she found her footing. But there were conditions. She would find an apartment she could actually afford, she would get a stable job, she would contribute to household expenses, she would attend financial counseling, she would join me in sessions with Dr. Hayes. "This isn't a rescue," I explained carefully. "It's a reset, a chance to rebuild on healthier terms." The recovery the following months weren't easy. Olivia moved through our home like a ghost at first, uncertain of her place, awkward in her gratitude. I had to resist the constant urge to smooth her path, to solve her problems before she could even articulate them. Dr. Hayes helped me recognize these patterns and interrupt them. "She's not a child anymore. When you treat her like one, you're communicating that you don't believe she's capable of adult responsibilities." Olivia found a job at a local marketing firm, not as prestigious as her freelance clients had been, but stable with benefits and a reasonable salary. The new apartment. By September, Olivia had saved enough for the security deposit on a small apartment near her new job. Richard and I helped her move, carrying boxes and assembling furniture, but deliberately stepping back from decorating decisions. "It's small," she said as we surveyed the finished space, "but it's mine. I can afford it on my own." There was pride in her voice. Tentative, but real. Perhaps the first time she had felt genuine ownership of her accomplishments, without the cushion of our support making success inevitable. When Thanksgiving approached, we faced a new dilemma. Would we invite Olivia? And if so, how? Would we navigate the complicated emotions the holiday would inevitably bring? We decided to invite Olivia for dinner only. Not the entire weekend, as had been our tradition. When I extended the invitation, Olivia's response surprised me. "Actually," she said, sounding hesitant, "I was thinking I might host this year, at my place. It's small, but I'd like to try." She wanted to cook Thanksgiving dinner. "I've been taking cooking classes," she admitted, "part of my self-improvement plan, learning to do things for myself instead of expecting others to do them for me." The meal of reconciliation on Thanksgiving Day. Richard and I arrived at Olivia's apartment with just a bottle of wine. As requested, the small space was transformed. Clean, decorated with simple fall arrangements, the table set with mismatched but charming dishes she must have found at thrift stores. The meal wasn't perfect. The turkey was slightly overdone, the gravy had lumps, and the pumpkin pie had cracked down the middle, but Olivia had made everything herself, from scratch, without assistance or rescue. After dinner, she pulled out a small package from a drawer. "I made something for you," she said, pushing it across the table, toward me. Inside was a handmade card,